Hello and welcome to another segment of Good to Know Family Law Topics. In this segment, I'm going to discuss with you whether or not you can get a restraining order. And in addressing this issue, I'm going to talk about three primary factors that you must consider before you go to court and file your request for a restraining order. Now, I'm talking about, in California, domestic violence restraining orders opposed to restraining orders that you may get in other states or that you may get in the criminal court or in the civil court. This is specifically talking about the family court. The first factor that you have to consider is whether or not you and the opposing party have the appropriate relationship to qualify for a domestic violence restraining order in family court. Now, the types of relationships that qualify are the relationships that are intimate in nature, such as husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, people that cohabited, and also people that are closely related, like brothers and sisters, parents, grandfather, grandmother, grandchild. If we're talking about a neighbor, then you're not going to qualify for a domestic violence restraining order, and you're probably going to have to go elsewhere to get your restraining order. The second factor that you must consider is whether or not the conduct of the opposing party qualifies as domestic violence under the family code. Now, under California's family code, domestic violence is very broad, so it encompasses a lot of things. It not only includes assault and battery and threats of physical violence, but it also includes harassing type of behavior and simply behavior that disturbs the peace of a reasonable person under similar circumstances. Now, when you're looking at the conduct of the other party, remember that the First Amendment of our Constitution gives us free speech. So the court is not going to issue a restraining order if a person is simply exercising his or her free speech, even if the speech is offensive in nature. Now, not all speech is protected, and so things like threats will be grounds for a restraining order. So just consider the fact that there are constitutional rights that the court will consider when reviewing your request for a restraining order. The final thing that I think you seriously have to consider is whether or not you have the evidence necessary to convince the court to issue the restraining order. In California Family Court, to get a domestic violence restraining order, you have the burden of proof. Now, the burden of proof is simply by preponderance of the evidence. And what that means is that you've got to tilt the scales just a little bit in your favor in order to get the restraining order. But as we all know, there are a lot of situations where it's a he said, she said situation, and the court may find it impossible to decide whether or not there was domestic violence. So what you want to do is look for corroborating evidence. Don't get me wrong. The force of your testimony may be enough to get a restraining order, but it's probably safer for you to look for corroborating evidence. What is corroborating evidence? Well, we're looking at things like text messages, photographs of injuries or damaged property. We're looking at harassing emails. And of course, don't forget voice messages or witnesses who may have seen the incident. Now, if you don't have those things, it doesn't mean you can't go forward with a request for a restraining order. It just may be a little bit more difficult. As a final tip to you, what I'm going to suggest is that you closely look at the evidence, and if it's razor thin and it's not seriously violent in nature, let's say that it's harassing text messages, maybe what you want to do is issue a cease and desist message to the opposing party. You can do this by form of a letter or an email, and if the party continues with the conduct, then you'll have a better chance of getting your restraining order. Thank you again for joining us for Good to Know Family Law Topics, and please look at our blog, please look at our YouTube videos for further information that may be helpful to you in family court.